People think evil announces itself. They think it arrives loudly, violently, obviously. But real evil is patient. It studies you, it earns your trust, and sometimes it wears a white coat. St. Mercy Hospital stood like a monument of hope in the center of the city. Its glass walls reflected the skyline, glowing softly against the dark night. Inside, machines hummed gently, footsteps echoed across polished floors, and lives balanced quietly between recovery and goodbye. In that building worked a man who people believed was incapable of harm, Dr. Arman Qureshi. His name carried weight. Families spoke it with gratitude. Medical journals praised his precision. Wealthy donors shook his hand proudly at charity galas. When he walked through the corridors, nurses straightened, interns observed carefully, and patients felt reassured. He was calm in emergencies, measured in speech, controlled in emotion. Nothing about him felt reckless, and that was exactly why no one questioned him. Room 307 was softly lit that evening. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and lilies. Margaret Whitmore rested against white pillows, her dark hair falling loosely over her shoulders. She didn't look sick. She looked tired, 32 years old, intelligent eyes. A quiet confidence that came from being raised in a family that built empires. She wasn't supposed to be here for long. Doctors had described her condition as mild. A temporary cardiac irregularity. Monitoring, rest, and she would be back home within days. Her husband Daniel sat beside her bed, holding her hand as if it might disappear if he loosened his grip. His face showed concern, but beneath it was something harder to read. He kept checking his phone, then placing it face down as soon as she noticed. "You'll be out of here before the weekend," he told her gently. Margaret smiled, though the hospital light made her skin look pale. "You promise?" "Of course," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "You have the best doctor in the country." The door opened quietly. Dr. Arman stepped inside with the kind of composure that settles a room instantly. "Good evening," he said warmly. Margaret relaxed the moment she saw him. "Doctor, I was just telling Daniel I'm tired of this place." He gave a small chuckle. "That's usually a good sign. It means your body is fighting back." He reviewed her chart with steady focus. Her heart rate was slightly elevated, nothing alarming, nothing that would cause panic, just enough to justify intervention. "I'd like to help you get proper rest tonight," he explained. "Sleep stabilizes everything. I'll administer something very mild, you won't even notice it." Margaret trusted him without hesitation. Daniel stepped aside, watching closely but saying nothing. Dr. Arman prepared the syringe slowly. Clear liquid filled the barrel. His hands didn't tremble. His breathing remained even. He inserted the needle gently into Margaret's IV line. The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Margaret's eyelids grew heavy. "Feels warm," she murmured faintly. "That's normal," he assured her. His fingers adjusted the dosage slightly. A small increase, barely visible. Daniel swallowed. "Everything okay?" "Completely," the doctor replied, eyes fixed on the monitor. The beeping changed. Beep, pause, beep, longer pause. Margaret's chest rose slowly, then more slowly. Daniel stood up. "Doctor?" Dr. Arman leaned forward as if concerned. "Margaret, can you hear me?" Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. The monitor's rhythm stretched thin, and then a long, piercing tone cut through the room. Flatline. Nurses rushed in, voices overlapped. "Clear," shock delivered. Margaret's body jolted again. Clear, more compression, more urgency. But something felt rehearsed. There was effort, but not desperation. After several minutes, Dr. Arman stepped back. He removed his gloves carefully, disposing of them with quiet precision. He lowered his head. "I'm sorry," he said softly. Time of death was announced with clinical calmness. Daniel staggered backward, pressing his hands against his face. His shoulders shook. The image of a devastated husband unfolded perfectly. Outside the room, staff whispered in disbelief. So sudden. So tragic, so unexpected. Inside room 307, silence settled heavily. Margaret Whitmore, heir to a fortune, daughter to a powerful mother, young and vibrant only hours ago, now lay motionless. But the story didn't end there, because walls in hospitals are thinner than people realize. In room 308, separated only by a narrow stretch of drywall, another patient lay awake. Elena Karev, 48 years old. Half her body refused to obey her mind. A neurological condition had paralyzed her from the waist down months ago. Doctors labeled her recovery uncertain. Some even wrote in quiet notes that she exhibited mild delusional tendencies. Funny how quickly society doubts those who cannot defend themselves physically. Elena couldn't move, she couldn't sit up, she couldn't call out, but she could hear, and she had heard everything. The soft knock, the doctor's reassuring tone, the subtle shift in the machine's rhythm. She had also seen something others missed. The pause. That brief, unnatural hesitation before he called for help. Her eyes had remained slightly open, unfocused enough to appear asleep. She watched shadows move across the wall as chaos unfolded next door. When the flatline sound pierced the air, her heart began racing wildly inside her motionless body. She tried to lift her hand. Nothing. She tried to form a word. Air caught in her throat. Tears pooled at the corners of her eyes. Footsteps approached her door moments later. It opened slowly. Dr. Arman stepped inside. Alone, the emergency had ended. His face had returned to neutral composure. He stood beside her bed quietly. For several seconds he simply observed her breathing, her pupils, searching, testing. Elena forced her eyes to remain unfocused. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain he could hear it. He leaned slightly closer. "You should be resting," he said softly. His hand adjusted her IV line. Another injection. Cool liquid flowed into her veins. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she fought to stay conscious. He studied her face one last time. Then he smiled faintly. "If you're dreaming," he whispered, "stay asleep." He left without another word. The door clicked shut. Elena's tears finally escaped, sliding slowly across her temple. In that moment, she understood something with terrifying clarity. Margaret had not simply died from a complication. She had been silenced, and the man everyone trusted had orchestrated it. Outside, the hospital resumed its calm rhythm. Night shift reports were filed, paperwork completed, tragedy recorded in neutral medical language. But inside room 308, a war had quietly begun. Because somewhere in that building, a paralyzed woman carried a truth powerful enough to destroy a legend. And legends do not fall easily. They fight back. This was only the beginning. The problem with witnessing a crime is surviving long enough to prove it. Elena Karev did not sleep that night. Her body lay still, but her mind refused to shut down. Every second replayed in brutal clarity. The syringe, the pause. The flatline, the doctor's whisper. She had lived in that hospital bed for 4 months, long enough to understand routines, long enough to recognize the difference between urgency and performance. What she saw in room 307 was not panic. It was timing. Morning arrived like nothing had happened. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, nurses changed shifts, coffee cups replaced exhaustion. Margaret's room was cleaned by noon. By afternoon, a new patient would take the bed. Hospitals move on quickly. Elena did not. Her condition had stolen movement from her legs and weakened her hands, but her hearing was sharp and her memory even sharper. When the day nurse entered her room, Elena tried again. She forced her throat to tighten. A sound escaped. Rough, broken, barely human. The nurse paused. "Are you in pain?" Elena's eyes widened desperately. She tried to blink deliberately. Once, twice, 3 times, the nurse misunderstood. She adjusted the pillow gently. "It's okay," she said kindly. "You're safe." Safe. The word felt like a cruel joke. Later that afternoon, Dr. Arman entered her room during regular rounds. He wore the same professional calm, same steady voice. "How are we feeling today, Elena?" Her heart rate jumped instantly. The monitor betrayed her fear. He noticed. He always noticed. He stepped closer to her bed. "Still anxious," he said softly, glancing at the screen. "We may need to increase sedation. Stress delays recovery." Recovery. Another lie wrapped in medical language. He adjusted her IV himself. The dosage changed. A slow injection, cool liquid spread through her veins. Her mind began to fog at the edges. Before leaving, he leaned near her ear again. "You look like someone who dreams too much," he murmured. "Dreams can confuse reality." Her chest tightened. He knew, he wasn't certain, but he suspected, and suspicion was enough. Outside her room, whispers began spreading through the hospital. Margaret Whitmore's death was trending in private circles. Wealthy families ask questions when money is involved. Her mother, Evelyn Whitmore, arrived that evening. Grief had hollowed her face, but anger sharpened her eyes. She requested a private meeting with Dr. Arman. Inside his office, she sat upright, refusing tea. "My daughter was improving," she said firmly. "I saw her reports." Dr. Arman folded his hands calmly on the desk. "Cardiac instability can escalate without warning. We acted immediately." Evelyn stared at him, searching for cracks. There were no prior complications. "Sometimes the heart doesn't follow patterns," he replied gently. His tone carried empathy, measured, controlled, almost soothing, too soothing. Evelyn left unconvinced, and Dr. Arman made a phone call immediately after. "Pressure may increase," he said quietly into the receiver. "But it's manageable." Across the hospital, Elena's sedation deepened. Her muscles felt heavier than usual. Her eyelids resisted effort. The world blurred more quickly. She understood the pattern. The more anxious she appeared, the more medication she received. The more medication she received, the less credible she would seem. Brilliant. Label the witness unstable. Drug her into confusion. If she ever tried to speak, her words would sound fragmented, unreliable. It was a silent strategy, and it was working. Days passed. Margaret's funeral filled newspapers and social media. Photos of smiling charity events circulated beside black ribbons. Daniel Whitmore played the grieving husband perfectly. Interviews, emotional pauses, public statements about love and loss. Elena watched the news on the mounted hospital television. Every time Dr. Arman's face appeared on screen offering condolences, nausea rose in her throat. He spoke beautifully. "Medicine has limits," he told reporters. "We did everything possible." Elena's fingers twitched slightly, a small movement, almost invisible. She focused harder. The effort exhausted her, but she tried again. A tremor. Her index finger shifted half a centimeter. Hope flickered inside her chest. If she could move even slightly, she could signal. Later that evening, a younger nurse entered her room for vitals. Sophia Malik, new to the hospital, observant eyes, quieter than most. She noticed Elena's finger tremble. "That's new," Sophia murmured. Elena blinked rapidly. Sophia leaned closer. "Are you trying to tell me something?" Elena forced her finger to move again. The effort felt like lifting concrete with a thread. Sophia's expression changed. She lowered her voice. "If you can hear me, blink twice." Elena blinked, once, twice. Sophia froze. Her training told her neurological patients can have involuntary reflexes, but this didn't feel random. This felt intentional. Before Sophia could test further, the door opened. Dr. Arman, he stepped inside smoothly. "Everything all right?" Sophia straightened immediately, just checking her motor response. Dr. Arman approached the bed, observing Elena carefully. "She has intermittent spasms," he explained. "They're not purposeful." His eyes locked onto Elena's. Warning, clear, unspoken. Sophia nodded slowly, though uncertainty lingered. After he left, Sophia glanced back at Elena. The room felt heavier. That night, Elena stared at the ceiling long after lights dimmed. She understood the truth clearly now. She wasn't just a patient. She was a liability, and liabilities are either controlled or eliminated. Her breathing remained shallow but steady. Fear lived in her veins, but beneath the fear, something stronger was forming, determination. Because she may have lost control of her body, but she still owned her memory. And memory can be dangerous, especially when it refuses to die. Hospitals have routines. They run like clockwork. Machines beep, nurses shuffle, charts are signed, lives ebb and flow. People move in patterns so predictable that a single misstep stands out like a screaming red light. Elena had learned those patterns in months. She had memorized every footstep, every shift change, every tone in the hall. She had even mapped the doctor's rhythm, the subtle pauses, the perfect timing of his movements. That rhythm had killed Margaret Whitmore, and it was still in play. Meanwhile, outside the hospital walls, grief had a different form. Margaret's mother, Evelyn Whitmore, was furious. Not just sad, furious. She saw what no one else did, the way Daniel held back, the way Dr. Arman's hands never trembled. The reports said Margaret had been improving. Everything indicated she should have been alive. Yet here she was, gone. Money had a name. Whitmore Estate, $40 million in liquid assets, properties, and investments. And now, suddenly, Daniel Whitmore controlled all of it. Evelyn's heart raced as she connected dots that others either ignored or didn't see. A private investigator was hired discreetly. Subtle surveillance. Quiet phone calls, records checked, bank statements unearthed. Large sums moved to obscure accounts, consultant fees, medical advisory payments, transfers to a shell company. Each number painted a picture of premeditation. Inside St. Mercy, Elena's life continued to hang by a thread. Dr. Arman continued his rounds, maintaining the same unflappable calm. But every adjustment, every injection, every soft word was strategic. He knew the potential of a witness. He knew the value of compliance. Sophia, the young nurse, had begun noticing inconsistencies, dosages recorded incorrectly, shift logs missing minutes, doors unaccounted for, security camera blind spots that conveniently lined up with the doctor's late-night visits. She didn't tell anyone yet, not until she had proof. Elena tried to communicate. Trembling fingers, slow blinks, tiny movements. It was exhausting. Every attempt left her body aching. But each movement was a declaration. I saw it, I know it, I remember. Dr. Arman's presence was suffocating. He leaned close to her bed, lowering his voice. You look restless. Sleep helps, trust me. Sleep. The word had never felt more like a weapon, but Elena resisted. One night when the ward was quiet and fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, Sophia entered with a clipboard. She approached cautiously. Elena, are you trying to tell me something? A single blink. Once. Twice. Sophia froze, her heart thudded. This was no accident. Before she could investigate further, the door opened. Dr. Arman. His eyes swept the room. Calm, observant, calculating. She's having spasms, Sophia said quickly, keeping her voice neutral. Of course, he replied softly. We'll monitor closely. Nothing unusual? He moved toward the IV stand, adjusted it slightly. Elena felt the familiar cold surge. Her mind fought to stay sharp. Her body betrayed her. After he left, Sophia checked the monitor logs. There it was. A discrepancy, a 6-minute gap in room surveillance, right at the exact time Margaret had died. A pattern emerged. Elena realized her paralysis could be her cover. If she survived, if she communicated subtly, she could become the instrument that unveiled the truth. Outside the hospital, Evelyn continued her quiet war. Daniel Whitmore's sudden wealth, the transfer patterns, and his suspicious calm nagged at her. Something wasn't adding up. And she had seen him whisper to someone on the phone the night before Margaret's death. Inside, Dr. Arman reviewed the records personally. Adjustments made, cameras checked, footsteps unaccounted for minimized. Another injection scheduled. The plan was seamless, almost perfect, but perfection is fragile. A single blink, a single observation, a human eye remembering what machines could not. Elena blinked slowly, then deliberately twice. Sophia caught it. She leaned closer, lips moving silently, asking, Are you trying to tell me? The tension in the room thickened, because now the web wasn't just around Elena. It had begun to stretch toward the outside world. And the more it stretched, the tighter it became. No one outside yet knew the depth of the danger, but the first pieces were moving. The chessboard was set, and in the shadows of St. Mercy, one thing was clear. Elena had seen the move no one else could see, and that made her deadly. Fade out. Next episode, line for retention. When the silent witness awakens, even the most perfect plan begins to crack. Hospitals have walls, but secrets slip through every crack. Elena lay still, her body heavy and unresponsive. Yet her mind was electric, alive with a storm of awareness. Every word she had overheard, every shadow she had watched, every subtle movement, it was stored, memorized, catalogued. The night nurse, Sophia, returned quietly. Her steps were measured. Her eyes darted toward the IV stand, checking lines and drips. Elena blinked deliberately, once, twice. Sophia froze, her heartbeat spiked. This was not random. Not a reflex, this was intention. I hear you, Sophia whispered. Elena tried to move her fingers again, tiny tremors along her right hand. She was exhausting herself, but determination coursed through her veins. This time the message was clear. I know everything, I saw it, and it must be stopped. Meanwhile, in another wing of the hospital, whispers began spreading. Margaret Whitmore's sudden death, though officially labeled complication, had drawn attention in high society circles. Her estate was massive, her wealth considerable. Daniel Whitmore's new control over her assets raised eyebrows. Lawyers began asking quiet questions. Financial auditors checked discreetly. Back in room 308, Dr. Arman made his rounds with his signature calm. The syringe in his pocket gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Each adjustment he made to Elena's sedatives was precise, calculated, strategic. He had no idea that someone, even paralyzed, could begin to fight back in silence. Sophia's suspicion grew. She had noticed odd gaps in the surveillance logs, discrepancies in patient charts, and the doctor's unusual late-night visits. But she hadn't spoken to anyone, not yet. She needed proof, solid evidence. That night, Elena forced her mind to stay alert as the sedatives worked their quiet magic. She imagined every step Dr. Arman had taken. Every detail, the syringe, the pause, the precise timing. She repeated it in her mind over and over as if rehearsing a message to the outside world. Hours passed. Nurses changed shifts, footsteps echoed in the halls, machines hummed. Elena's mind never slept. Then, a breakthrough, a small movement of her wrist, just a millimeter, Sophia noticed. Her eyes widened. She leaned closer, whispering, "I see you, I know you're trying." Elena blinked rapidly, almost imperceptibly nodding. The plan had begun. Across the hospital, Dr. Arman reviewed patient charts in his office. He smiled faintly at the surveillance monitors, unaware that the silent witness in room 308 had begun to communicate. He believed the sedatives had rendered her compliant. That assumption would cost him. At that moment, Evelyn Whitmore took a crucial step. Private investigators delivered their first set of findings. Bank transfers, suspicious communications. Anomalies that hinted someone had orchestrated more than just medical negligence. The pieces were aligning. Back in Elena's room, Sophia adjusted the IV line. A small bottle remained visible on the tray, a backup for the doctor's sedation plan. She noted it mentally, every detail mattered. For the first time in months, Elena's mind felt a spark of hope, not just survival, action. The tools were there, the knowledge, the observer, the ally. The tension in the hospital thickened, almost tactile. Staff moved, oblivious to the storm brewing in one paralyzed patient's mind and in the young nurse's growing suspicion. And in that quiet corridor, as shadows lengthened under the night lights, Elena made a silent vow. She would not just witness, she would fight, she would expose. The first pieces of the plan were set in motion. The chessboard had shifted. And now, even the most controlled hands, even the most perfect plans were vulnerable, fade out. When truth finds a way, even the strongest masks begin to crumble.